Alright, so let's start looking at ways of doing searching algorithms. There's a bunch of different ones out there. We're going to start with sequential search. So let's start off by creating an array. So we're just going to throw some test scores up here. The student's gradually getting better, but still not passing. Then we're going to make an integer results here. And then we're going to use those results. We're going to store the results in the results from this variable from our sequential search. So let's take a look at creating our function or method called sequential search and how it'll sort through. So the first thing is we want to declare our method. So we're going to make a public static integer called sequential search, and we are actually going to pass in the array. So let's go ahead and make a new variable in here, or I'm sorry, new array in here, and I'll just call this array. And then we need to pass in the value that we're going to be looking for. Okay, that's also going to be an integer. So let's start out by declaring some variables. We're going to be using a while loop in this. So we're going to declare our index to help us loop through our array. And then this is going to be the element that's found. So let's comment that out. So element, the value is found. And then we're going to create our check, which is our Boolean. We'll just call it found. And this is going to check, it's like a flag, and it indicates if we indicates our search result. Okay. Right, let's space this out a little bit so we can. Alright, so we know element 0 is the first starting point of our array, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and create, let's go ahead and just assign index here to 0. Okay. And let's look at looking at the default value of the elements, right? So we can say element equals -1, right? And that if it's found, we'll go ahead and just set that to false because we don't know whether we found it yet. Alright, let's take a look at searching the array now. Alright, so while, let's create our structure. While it is not found, which we know it isn't because we've marked it as false here, and the index of our array is still less than the array that we're passing in, that length, right? We're going to do a check. So if we didn't find it and our array is not at the end of it, we're going to check if the item at our array's index is the same as the value being passed in. Let's go ahead and close this up with our curly brace. And if it's found, it equals true. And then we're going to place inside of that element whatever the index is. Alright, so now we know where it is, and we found it. And what we want to do is we want to continuously step through our index, and we're going to do that while we're going through this. Now remember that we made this a integer method, and we didn't really talk about this before. So we have to add a return statement at the end here, and it has to return some sort of int. Well, what is the int that we're returning? Well, we're going to return this element here. So once it runs through this, and the element is going to be whatever the element is in the index of the array. So let's take a look at how we can run this function here. So first thing we're going to do is take results. We're going to paste it here, and we're going to have it call our sequential search function. And what we want to pass into this is obviously our tests array, and then whatever value we're looking for. So let's say we're looking for 50. Okay. Now we don't really have a check in here. We're just checking if the element is there. We don't have anything printing out yet saying whether or not we found it. Well, do you remember how in element we set it to -1 inside of this function here, right, in our sequential search? So what we can do is we can use that to check. So we'll determine whether 50 was found and display a message. All right, so let's comment that out. Let's write that code. So if, open close parentheses, and then we're going to do result is the same as -1, right, because we're returning result. I think it's results. We're going to print out, remember it's control and space where I do that. You did not earn a 50% or 50 on a test. Alright? Else, I'll just copy this line. You earned a 50 on the test. So let's go ahead and play this and see what happens. You see you earned a 50 on the test. So the power behind this is really just we're checking if it was found. Here's our check boolean, turning it on and off, right? We're looking at the length of our array, and then all we're doing is cycling through that index to see if it's the same as the value that we're looking for that was passed in.